our guest here. Thank you so much for joining us. Colleagues, delighted you can join us. I'm going to speak as little as possible. Really, this is about a conversation where we can start having interaction. I know other people will be dropping in as the clinical rota allows. So, again, excited to start this journey in terms of how do we use data better? How do we go in this AI journey? And how do we figure out how to have the maximum impact as possible with the resources we have available to us? Um, this is the agenda. I'm not going to spend too long on this. Again, the idea is that we want to just get straight into this as quickly as possible. Leo will be helping facilitate, so thank you to Leo and the team again. We'll get a demonstration of the Mimic data set. And then most of the time, we've actually shifted towards time to talk about pain points. And really, if I think about the Innovation Hub, that's our biggest challenge. How do we understand everyone's pain points? How do we prioritize those pain points? And then how do we put into plan an effective way of enacting on them, again, with the resources we have available to us? And that's the thing I'd like to sort of constantly have in mind as we have the conversation today. Got to give a shout out to my colleagues sitting over on the side. So Sarju, co-director of the Hub, and Jalil, another co-director of the Hub and driving force behind this. So thank you for all you do. And again, delighted you can join us and be part of today's discussion. I just want to quickly go back to our pillars of the Hub. So again, I won't spend too long on this, but we're quite ambitious. We're very fortunate to have Ruben Gruber as a donor who's supporting our AI initiative, who's helping us fund this concept for the sandbox. So really, if you think about the purpose of today, to learn about the sandbox model, which we'll have a demonstration on today. And I was on a webinar earlier this week, and they were talking about everything has to start with our data. We have to understand how we leverage it, and we have to start marrying together the data experts with the clinical experts, so we can start to have the right conversations. We can start to have the tools. So again, I'm really excited to get the demonstration of the tools that's being created. How do we leverage and access that data more efficiently? And so these are our three pillars. So clearly we have patient care at the starting one, but we know that the admin burnout from all the unautomated tasks with a huge opportunity, I think, with AI, and always again having one lens on sustainability. I think healthcare in general in the US is responsible for about 8.5% of all emissions. So I think, when we think about AI, how green is the AI? Like, where are all these data centers getting their energy from? It's the thing we have to have an eye on constantly when we're thinking about developing our solutions. I thought this was an interesting stat. I was just looking this morning at an MIT study talking about just the lack of ROI within AI. And I think, again, we have to be very intentional with thinking about our data and how we leverage this. There's a lot of money. I think 2/3 of all venture capital funding is going into AI. So you just feel like if you're doing a pitch as a startup, you have to mention those two letters, otherwise you're going to get overlooked. I think the big exciting thing for us as a healthcare system is we have all this data again. We have the ability to prioritize and check the agenda and to be proactive. Right now, there's no shortage of companies coming to approach us. So again, how can we use that data to be intentional, be intelligent about the problems we want to solve? And I shared a quite short survey. If you haven't had a chance to do it, feel free to pull out your phone. Again, really, it's just a bit of baseline setting. We will have a post-event survey. Again, 3 questions. It's very light touch. Really, this is just about understanding what is the thing that is important to you. But again, we can have that discussion today. We want to try and capture this. And again, I think as we think about, I was mentioning this challenge of understanding the pain points and prioritizing them, how do we structure that information? And this is the most basic way we can do it, asking the least amount of questions, but the most important questions about what is your priority, what is your pain point? And then we can find that commonality where we can take more of a system approach to solving issues. Just going to pause for a second and just make sure everyone's able to get that. And that is us. So we're straight into it, Neil. I know, like, you're happy just to say a few words and then we can just get right in. But again, this is a conversation. So if you have any questions, concerns, please raise your hand. We are recording this. Again, there is no bad thing to say. There's, this is a room where we can feel safe. This is a room where I think, again, we want to spark discussion and opportunity. And so I just thank you all for being here today. I'm going to pass it across to Neil.
Thanks, Richard. I was writing down my thoughts on the way here from Beth Israel Deaconess. First of all, thank you for hosting us. This is a much nicer place than the Beth Israel Deaconess. Much more space, much quieter. So anyway, I don't think that I'm exaggerating when I say that we are waking up to a very different world. I think AI has made it easy to truly automate our day-to-day life with tasks and decision making. Every level job is under threat. I think AI will replace that. And of course, that will have huge consequences. When white collar jobs are decimated, the middle class will disappear. But again, this has been described over and over in the past about what is the impact of technology, where the return on capital performs the growth of the economy. Its potential uh, really and really for wealth inequality. And that's something that has not really been talked about. People talk about the cognitive atrophy, but to me, there are much bigger problems that we are facing with. And I think AI will fail not because it will be wrong. I think it will fail because it is so successful in making it easy to delegate our decision making and thinking to AI. So to a certain degree, there's still the cognitive atrophy there. It will trample anything and everything in its path. And we're seeing legacy systems crumbling. And why is that? Because we've never seen anything like this. It is moving not only at a speed that we have never seen before, but it continuously shifts form and function. I can't even tell you what AI is going to look like 6 months from now. When ChatGPT was launched in November 2022, we had no clue that there will be model context protocols that can perform all the steps of a scientific process from get me the data, select a cohort, clean up the data, curate it for me, write a manuscript, peer review the manuscript. And truly, this is something that we should be worried about because it's happening. It will happen. It will come. Maybe not this year, but perhaps next year. So how do we learn a field that is not only moving so fast, but it's also shifting its form with each iteration? Um, Education models and strategies of the previous century will no longer cut it. I think we've reached that conclusion early on. Clinical validation through trials will not cut it because by the time you publish a paper looking at the impact of an AI tool, it takes about 2 years, and that AI is already outdated. So you have to start from scratch again. So those is not going to have the 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 effect size that you're wanting to measure. Um, and of course, scientific process and knowledge creation will need to be reimagined because the identities of people whose identities are knowledge based are truly fragmented. Doctors are no longer knowledge experts. Scientists are no longer knowledge experts. So we have to be good at something else because that expertise is truly going to be replaced by something that's cheaper than you, that won't need to sleep at night, that won't get tired. So again, we are being given an immense opportunity to blow things up, to start from scratch, to wipe the slate clean and rethink what would be the design of systems. So why are we here? We need to reimagine care, not with unearned knowledge, because AI is alluring us with unearned knowledge, but a newly earned understanding. And how do we do that? How do we earn understanding? And the more common question that we hear is how do we teach critical thinking? And I would argue that you cannot teach critical thinking because the very fact that, oh, I'm going to teach how to critically think, and the student will just say, oh my God, that's how I critically think. That is antithetical to critical thinking. Critical thinking has to be discovered, it needs to be experienced. And all we can do is create an environment where you can nurture critical thinking. And how do we do that? We do that in ways that we are seeing now. This is the future. This is the future that we envision. Unfortunately, the clinicians are not here. But we think that the only way to move forward is to truly open the floodgates, bring in people who don't think like us to disrupt the way we create knowledge, the way we create evidence. Um, and more importantly, we need to give young people seats at the table because the old farts like us, like me, we can't solve the problem. because we have preserved those problems. If we could solve those problems, we would have solved them a long time ago. So we don't have the mindset, we don't have the worldviews that will allow us to fix problems that we complain about year after year, decade after decade. We need to let out our creative juices. And the way to do that is you interface people who don't think alike. Unfortunately, legacy systems are very much allergic. I always get pushback when I say we need to bring young people. Like, no, they haven't earned their keep. They don't have a right to sit at the table. And I said, well, that's a recipe for failure. You're gonna fail. I was scolding a group of intensivists, a group of geriatricians, because they're coming up with safeguards for AI, and they were all geriatricians. They were all intensive. Are you kidding me? You have no effing clue what this technology is about. You're talking about large language models and you've never heard of model context protocols. So again, I think another key ingredient is we have to leave hubris at the doorstep. Uh, we are looking at how hubris time and time again has truly resist change. And we have so many examples where hubris has killed people. Like when Ignaz Semmelweis, Hungarian doctor, said that, oh, doctors have to wash their hands before delivering babies. He was shocked because his thinking is very much different from the current thinking at that time. And it took hundreds of years before we realized that he was right. And then again, I could go on, speak for days about examples of this. And we're hoping that this understanding that your hubris is an obstacle would allow us to truly usher in this new industrial revolution. So we're here today. We're going to talk about this model context protocol that has been developed to allow users to interrogate the Mimic database. So a few words about the Mimic database. This has been in existence for 15 years, more than 15 years now. It's data coming from all the intensive care units of Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. They've been de-identified and they've been shared with the rest of the world. It has produced 10,000 papers on Google Scholar. Every month we receive letters from students from around the world saying that they cannot access the database from their own hospital, so they use Mimic and they thank us. And somehow I would like to be grateful to the fact that people are not sharing their data because it's catapulted my career. Like 10,000 citations of the Mimic datasets and its offsprings and siblings. And this wouldn't have happened if we have this attitude towards sharing data. So thank you for not sharing your data because we are where we are now because people don't share data. So the model context protocol will be demonstrated by Rafi and Ryan. I don't know if Rafaela will join, but it allows people not to have a deep understanding of SQL, a deep understanding of the data set. But we caution when we wrote about this, we said that this is not a justification not to work with data scientists. Every clinician needs to work with data scientists and social scientists because every clinician does not fully grasp problems with the data set. We don't understand the biases of each medical device. We don't understand how we're collecting data with different frequency across patients. We don't understand how our perception of the patient, how they speak, how they look, affect the way we care for them. And those are all captured in the data set. And if you're not careful, those are all going to be encrypted in the way you develop these models. So we have a model context protocol, and what we're proposing is what we refer to as the AI sandbox for clinicians. So AI sandbox would have office hours that students, employees can sign up for, and we will assign a data scientist who is familiar with the Mimic data set, and they could ask questions, and then they would discuss with the data scientist uh, the, the output of the model context protocol. In the beginning, for the first 3 to 6 months, we will only interface the model context protocol to the Mimic demo set. So the Mimic demo set has been looked at by Safe Harbor. It's safe to truly share that with everyone else. Before we go to the entire mimic data set, it is required that they have to go through the credential process, where they have to show proof that they have undertaken a certification for human subject research training. Even though it's the identified, we feel that it's our obligation for the users to understand that these are not just numbers, they represent people's lives. And they need to know about some of the problems that we've seen in the history of life science research. And then they sign a data use agreement, and the environment is going to be contained. So people always say, oh, we cannot de-identify data. And I'm fine with that, because the identification is only the first layer. You cover that with more layers of protection and privacy. And the goal is for this to be the pipeline to produce AI tools, to validate AI tools. Right now, the model context protocol is only interfacing with Mimic, which has undergone a lot of pre-processing. What we want at some point is to be able to create a model context protocol that will interface with real-time data, data that has not been curated. And that's another leap in terms of challenges, because the artifacts of the electronic health record take years, if not decades, to be able to understand. The only reason we understand Mimic is we've had 100,000 credentialed users all helping understand the data. And it's a continuous process, it never ends. So somehow this needs to be the model. Otherwise, I think we fail. I will never trust I will never trust market scan. I will never trust an off-the-shelf data set, because I have no clue. There's no footprint of the provenance of what happened to the data from the source of capture all the way to the CSV file that you're working with. And at every layer, at every step, bias is introduced, information is lost, and information is introduced because of wrong assumptions. So what we are going to discuss after the demonstration is the main challenge that we see, which is how do we convince clinicians to come? And I think this is a reality check for us, that clinicians are not interested. They always say that they're already overworked. Why do they need to learn AI? And our answer is, if you're flying a plane and you're discovering new tools in the cockpit, you have no clue what they do. And you're expected to know when to use them. So what carrots and sticks do we need to create to get the clinicians enthused and excited about